Lisa stood in front of me, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. There was no guilt in her eyes, no hesitation, just a quiet confidence, like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, like she knew exactly how this was going to play out. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice steady. "I'm in love with someone else." I didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her, letting the words settle, waiting for the punchline. But it didn't come. Her lips parted slightly, annoyed by my silence. "Did you hear me, Jake?" Oh, I heard her. I heard her loud and clear. But what Lisa didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. See, this wasn't a revelation. Not for me. This was just confirmation. I already knew about her little affair. Knew about the stolen lunch breaks that stretched into hours, the sudden business trips that conveniently aligned with his schedule, the whispers in the dead of night, the way she started putting her phone face down. I knew everything. And the best part? She had no idea. I forced a smile, nodding slowly like I was processing. Wow, okay. This is a lot to take in. Her shoulders relaxed a little. She had expected rage, tears, begging. Instead, I was giving her quiet acceptance. She thought she had won. "Listen, I didn't want to hurt you," she continued, her tone softening. He makes me feel alive, Jake. I haven't felt this way in years." She said it like I was supposed to nod along, maybe even thank her for her honesty. Instead, I tilted my head. "So when were you going to tell me about the money?" Her face changed. Just a flicker. A quick, involuntary reaction. But I caught it. "What money?" she asked carefully. I let out a small chuckle. "Come on, Lisa. Give me some credit." She swallowed, the first sign of real unease creeping in. "Jake, I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do," I cut in. "The joint savings account? The one you drained? The credit cards you maxed out in my name? The emergency fund that somehow vanished right before your little getaway?" Silence. I watched her process it all, watched the color drain from her face. She thought she had been careful, thought she had covered her tracks. But Lisa had underestimated me. "Jake," she finally said, forcing a nervous laugh, "I don't know where you're getting this, but..." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen a few times. Then I turned it toward her. And there it was. Proof. Bank statements. Transactions. Screenshots. A digital trail of her betrayal, neatly organized and undeniable. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She stared at the screen, then back at me, realizing too late that the game wasn't in her favor anymore. "Before you go," I said, my voice calm, controlled, "let me show you something." Because Lisa thought she was walking away clean. But karma had other plans. Lisa's breath hitched, her fingers twitching at her sides as she stared at my phone screen. I could see the gears turning in her head, scrambling for a way out, for some excuse, some pathetic attempt to gaslight me into thinking I had it all wrong. She blinked rapidly, exhaling sharply. "Jake, this isn't... it's not what you think." I almost laughed. "Not what I think." Oh, Lisa. She could have admitted it, could have tried to beg. But no, she was still playing the game. I slid my phone back into my pocket, stepping closer. "Enlighten me, then. What exactly is this, Lisa? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been funneling money out of our accounts for months. Looks like you've been planning this little escape for a while." Her jaw tightened. She hated that I was calm, hated that I wasn't yelling, crying, breaking down. Lisa thrived on control, and for the first time, she didn't have it. I took another step toward her, lowering my voice. "So tell me, sweetheart, was I just your personal ATM? Was that the plan? Squeeze me dry and then disappear?" Her eyes darted to the side like she was calculating how much damage control she needed. Then, in an instant, her expression shifted anger. Manufactured, defensive. "You don't get to play the victim here, Jake. You weren't exactly the perfect husband." I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "Oh, this is the route you're taking?" She crossed her arms. "You were emotionally distant, right?" I nodded. "And that justified you screwing some other guy and robbing me blind?" Her nostrils flared. "You never made me feel special anymore." I tilted my head. And maxing out my credit cards made you feel special? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I could see the frustration bubbling, the realization that every excuse she threw at me was ricocheting right back in her face. I smiled. You know what, Lisa? You're right. Maybe I wasn't the perfect husband. Maybe I got too comfortable, too trusting. But you know what I didn't do? I cheat. Steal. Her face hardened. I didn't steal from you. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh? So that $5,000 you transferred to your secret account, what was that? Charity? Silence. For a second, just a brief second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Panic. That was the moment she knew. She wasn't the one holding the knife anymore. I was. Then, just as quickly, she smoothed her expression and scoffed. You're acting like I committed some crime. It's just money, Jake. Sure, I said, nodding. And I'm sure the police will see it that way, too. Her eyes widened. What? I pulled my phone out again, tapped the screen, and held it up so she could see the email. Fraud report filed. Her mouth opened, then closed. You... Oh. Did you think I was just gonna let you walk away with my money? I asked, feigning surprise. Nah, Lisa. See, unlike you, I actually think ahead. She took a step forward, her voice sharp. Undo it. I smiled. No, her hands curled into fists, her mask slipping for the first time. Jake, you don't want to do this. No, Lisa, you didn't want to do this. I stepped closer, dropping my voice. You thought you had everything figured out. Thought you could stab me in the back and waltz off into the sunset. But you forgot something. She swallowed, her eyes darting over my face. And what's that? I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper. I don't lose. Her breath caught. She had no idea what was coming next. Lisa's face went through a series of micro-expressions. Shock, anger, confusion, then something else. Fear. Just a flicker of it before she forced her features into that familiar mask of indifference. But I saw it. I saw the way her throat bobbed when she swallowed, the way her fingers twitched like she wanted to snatch my phone and smash it against the wall. I took my time, letting the silence stretch between us, watching as the reality of her situation settled in. You're bluffing, she finally said, voice tight. I tilted my head, amused. Am I? She licked her lips, eyes darting to my phone. You wouldn't do this to me, Jake. You wouldn't actually, what? I interrupted. Hold you accountable? Make sure you don't get to screw me over on your way out? Lisa, let's be real. You were never going to tell me about the money. If I hadn't caught on, you would have emptied every last account and left me with nothing but a goodbye note. Her silence was my answer. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to something just above a whisper. You thought you were so smart. Thought you had every little detail covered. But you made one mistake. Her breath hitched. And what's that? I smiled, slow and deliberate. You underestimated me. For the first time since this conversation started, Lisa looked truly unsteady. She hadn't expected this version of me. She had expected the Jake she thought she knew, the one who would sit there, blindsided, devastated, begging her to stay. The one who would take the hit, let her walk away, maybe even blame himself for not being enough. She didn't expect me to fight back. Her jaw clenched, her voice a sharp whisper. You're ruining everything. I let out a dry laugh. I'm ruining everything? That's rich, Lisa. I shook my head. No, sweetheart, you did that all on your own. She took a slow breath, like she was trying to center herself. Then, just like that, the mask was back. She straightened her shoulders, flipping her hair over one shoulder in that effortlessly confident way she always did when she wanted to look untouchable. Okay, she said, her tone light, almost dismissive. Fine. You want to play hardball? I can play hardball. I raised a brow, waiting. She sighed dramatically, folding her arms. Let's say I did transfer some money, $5,000, I corrected. At minimum. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. Let's say that happened. You really want to go down this road, Jake? You really want to make this messy? Messy? I laughed, shaking my head. Lisa, you already lit the match. You don't get to be mad now that the fire's spreading. She ignored that, tilting her chin up. You want to report me? Fine. I'll tell everyone you were emotionally abusive. I blinked once, then twice, and then I laughed. Loud, sharp, and humorless. Lisa's lips parted slightly, clearly not expecting that reaction. Oh wow, that's your move? Emotional abuse? I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. That's cute, Lisa. Really. But you might want to rethink that strategy. Her eyes narrowed. And why is that? I pulled out my phone again, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward her. A video. Her video. Lisa, standing in our bedroom, on the phone with her lover, completely unaware that my home security system had picked up every single word she said that night. Jake's such an idiot. He actually believes me when I tell him I love him. God, I can't wait to be rid of him. He's just comfortable, you know? I needed him for a while, but I'm done playing house. Her voice, crystal clear, betrayal woven into every syllable. The blood drained from her face. I smirked. Go ahead, Lisa. Tell people whatever you want. But I have this. Her lips parted. Yeah, I cut in smoothly. I did my homework. Turns out you're not as good at covering your tracks as you think. She stared at me completely silent. And then for the first time since this started, she looked scared. I slid my phone back into my pocket, my smirk fading as I took a step closer. You thought you had control, I murmured, watching her carefully. Thought you were the one pulling the strings. But you were wrong, Lisa. So wrong. And now? I tilted my head, letting the last part drip with satisfaction. Now you're just a rat in a cage. Her breath was shallow, her pupils blown wide. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice to a whisper. What's wrong? Sweetheart? You don't look so confident anymore. Lisa swallowed hard, her perfectly curated confidence fracturing in real time. The smugness she'd worn like armor just moments ago had slipped, and now she was standing there, blinking rapidly, her breathing uneven, her hands fidgeting at her sides. It was a beautiful sight. She had spent months, maybe years, crafting this betrayal, thinking she had outmaneuvered me at every turn. She believed she was the one in control, the mastermind, the woman who could have her cake, eat it too, and then set the damn bakery on fire while walking away untouched. But now she was realizing the truth. She wasn't leaving me. She was trapped with me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was the one holding the knife. She wet her lips. Jake, she started, her voice softer now, almost careful, like I was some wounded animal she needed to soothe. Maybe we're both just acting on emotion right now. I think we should just take a breath and talk about this rationally. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Rationally, I echoed. Yes. She nodded quickly. I mean, look, I know you're hurt. And I get it. But let's be adults about this. You don't want to do something you'll regret. I let out a slow, deliberate breath, then stepped closer, just enough to watch her shift her weight slightly backward, a subtle instinctual move, like prey trying to decide if running was an option. You think I'll regret this? I asked, my voice steady. Lisa, you should be the one regretting things right now. She blinked. Let's go over your brilliant strategy, shall we? I continued, not giving her a chance to recover. You had an affair. You stole from me. You lied. And then you thought you could just waltz out of here like some kind of tragic heroine, like I was just going to roll over and let you play the victim in my story. She flinched, but I wasn't done. You thought you were playing chess, but sweetheart, you didn't even realize you were the pawn. She exhaled sharply, her jaw clenching. Jake, no, I cut in, my voice cold now. You don't get to Jake me. Not after everything. You want to talk about regrets? Let's talk about yours. She straightened her shoulders, gripping onto the last shreds of her pride. Fine, she said, her tone clipped. You caught me. I screwed up. But do you really think you're gonna walk away from this unscathed? I smirked. Oh, I know I will. She let out a humorless laugh, shaking her head. God, you really think you're so much smarter than me, don't you? I raised a brow. Considering the fact that I've dismantled your entire escape plan in the last 10 minutes? Yeah, Lisa. I do. Her nostrils flared, her mask slipping again. You're enjoying this, she accused. I let out a short chuckle. What? Watching you realize you're not half as clever as you thought? Yeah, Lisa, I gotta admit it's kind of a highlight. She exhaled sharply, crossing her arms. Okay, let's cut the dramatics. What do you want? I watched her carefully, taking in the slight tremble in her fingers, the way she was trying to look unaffected but failing miserably. What do I want? I repeated, then let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. Lisa, sweetheart, I already have everything I want. She stiffened. I took my phone out again, tapped the screen a few times, and then I pressed play. The recording started. But not the video from earlier. No, this was something better. Something far worse for her. It was an entire conversation between her and her lover. One I had pulled from our home security system a week ago. Her voice crystal clear. I just need a little more time, baby. Jake's almost out of money anyway. A few more months and I'll be able to drain what's left. After that? I don't care. He can rot for all I care. Silence. Lisa's lips parted, her face draining of all color as the weight of her own words crashed down on her. I watched her, completely still, completely calm, while she stood there, listening to the undeniable proof that she was not only a liar, not only a cheater, but a cold, calculating parasite. The audio ended. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and folded my arms, watching her. Lisa was frozen. Completely. Her breathing was uneven, her fingers twitching slightly, her eyes locked on a random point on the floor like she was desperately trying to think of a way out of this. I let the silence stretch. Let her sit in it. Let her feel the weight of the consequences she had never once considered. And then, when I was sure she was fully aware of just how deep in hell she was, I smiled. Oops, I said, voice dripping with mock sympathy. Looks like you really screwed yourself this time. Lisa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Not at first. She just stood there, her body rigid, her breathing shallow, her fingers curling into fists like she wanted to hit something, me, probably. She had built her entire plan around control. Control over me. Control over the narrative. She thought she had set the stage so perfectly, positioning herself as the misunderstood wife, the woman who had simply fallen into another man's arms because her husband was too blind to see her needs. But now she wasn't the tragic heroine. She was the villain, and she knew it. I watched as she slowly dragged her gaze back to me, her expression shifting, morphing, recalibrating. Anger, then denial, then something colder. I didn't say that, she said. I let out a soft chuckle. Oh, sweetheart. You did. And the best part? I reached into my pocket, pulled my phone back out, and tapped the screen. It's all backed up. Multiple copies. Different locations. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You think this changes anything? I raised a brow. I think it changes everything. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head, pacing now like a caged animal. She ran a hand through her hair, then turned to me, her expression sharp. So what? You want to ruin me? Is that it? Drag my name through the mud? Because let me tell you something, Jake, you already ruined yourself, I cut in smoothly. She clenched her jaw. You, me? I smiled, tilting my head. Lisa, you are the one who got greedy. You are the one who played a game you weren't smart enough to win. You are the one who opened your mouth and handed me the rope to hang you with. Her face twitched. Just a tiny movement, but I caught it. Fine, she said after a moment, voice tight. Fine. You win. Congratulations. What do you want? You want me to grovel? Cry? Beg? Is that it? I smirked. Would be entertaining. She let out a humorless laugh. God, you're such a bastard. I shrugged. You made me this way. Her nostrils flared, her fingers twitching like she was physically restraining herself from lashing out. I should have left sooner. I laughed. You tried. And look how that worked out for you. Her glare was sharp enough to cut glass. So what now, Jake? You've backed me into a corner. You want me to admit I'm a horrible person? Fine. I'm a horrible person. There. Happy? I watched her carefully, then let out a slow, satisfied breath. Not quite. She stiffened. Then what? I stepped closer, lowering my voice just slightly. I want you to understand something, Lisa. I leaned in just enough to watch her tense, just enough to see the tiny flicker of unease in her eyes. You don't get to walk away from this clean. You don't get to win. She swallowed, her breathing uneven. Jake, no, I cut in, my voice ice. You don't get to talk. Not yet. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. I exhaled, tilting my head. Do you know what happens next? Silence. I let it stretch, let the tension build. Then I smiled. You're going to pack your things. And you're going to leave. Her brows pulled together. That's your big move? You're just going to let me go? I chuckled. Oh, sweetheart. You don't seem to understand. You're not leaving on your terms. You're leaving on mine. She inhaled sharply. You're walking away with nothing, Lisa, I continued, voice smooth. No money. No reputation. No sympathy. You think your little boyfriend is gonna welcome you with open arms once he realizes you're broke? Once he realizes I've already sent him copies of your recordings? Her eyes widened. Bingo. I smirked. Yeah. I made sure he got a nice little package. Every text. Every voice recording. Every shady little detail. Her breathing hitched. You didn't. I nodded. I did. She took a slow, shaky step back. Jake, please. Oh, now it's please? Funny how that works. I exhaled dramatically, shaking my head. See, you didn't just betray me, Lisa. You betrayed him too. You think he's gonna want you after this? I tilted my head. You think he's gonna be happy knowing he was just a side project until you had enough of my money to leave for good? She looked away, her throat bobbing as she swallowed hard. I smiled. Yeah, that's what I thought. She inhaled sharply, exhaling a shaky breath before snapping her gaze back to me. Her face was tight, her lips thin. You're evil. I laughed. No, Lisa. I'm just better at this than you. She shook her head, furious, lost, desperate. Then, in a last, pathetic attempt to regain some kind of control, she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and sneered, You'll regret this. I took a step closer, dropping my voice to a whisper. No, sweetheart. You will. Her breath caught. And just like that, the game was over. Lisa stood frozen, her lips slightly parted, her eyes darting across my face as if searching for a weakness, some last-minute loophole she could exploit. But there was nothing left for her to cling to. Every path she thought she had carved out for herself was now a dead end. The weight of it was finally sinking in. She wasn't the one leaving me behind. I was the one discarding her. You're lying, she finally said. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. He wouldn't believe you. I smirked. You sure about that? Lisa swallowed hard. I pulled out my phone again, scrolled for a second, then turned the screen toward her. Her lover's number, the messages I had sent, the attachments, the proof. Read. Delivered. Seen. Lisa inhaled sharply. Her fingers twitched. You had no right, I raised a brow. No right? I let out a humorless chuckle. Lisa, you had no right. No right to lie to me. No right to steal from me. No right to play me for a fool and expect me to just accept it. I shook my head. Actions have consequences, sweetheart. And you? You just met yours. She clenched her jaw. What do you want from me, Jake? You've humiliated me. Ruined everything I had planned. What more do you want? I studied her, taking in the raw frustration in her voice, the way her shoulders trembled ever so slightly. I had won. She knew it. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel it. Want? I repeated, pretending to consider. That's a great question. I took a step forward, forcing her to tilt her chin up to meet my gaze. I want you to think about this moment every time you close your eyes. I want you to remember how it feels to be outplayed. Her breath hitched. I smiled, slow and deliberate. And most of all, I want you to understand exactly how small you are. She flinched. For the first time since this started, Lisa looked broken. She had spent so long believing she had the upper hand, believing that she was the one orchestrating this grand betrayal, that I was just a disposable piece of her story. But now she had no money, no lover, no control. She had nothing, and it was glorious. She exhaled shakily, wetting her lips before whispering, I hate you. I grinned. You always did. A flicker of something crossed her face, guilt maybe, but she swallowed it down, straightening her spine, forcing herself to maintain some semblance of dignity. So what now? She asked, her voice low. I just pack my things and go? I shrugged. That's up to you. But if I were you? I'd leave before the cops show up. Her head snapped up. What? I smirked. Oh, did you think I was just bluffing about the fraud report? I pulled my phone out again, scrolled a little, and then turned the screen to her. Filed and submitted. Should be processed by morning. She inhaled sharply, her nostrils flaring. You son of a sked. Careful, Lisa. Wouldn't want your last words to me to be as pathetic as the rest of this conversation. Her hands curled into fists. She was trembling now, actually trembling, not from fear but from rage, pure and unfiltered. Get out, I said, voice sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. Her eyes snapped to mine. Pack your things and get the hell out of my house, I continued, my voice steady, calm, final. Because after tonight, you don't exist to me. Silence. Lisa just stared at me, her breathing uneven, her body taut like a coil wound too tight. Then, slowly, her lips curled into something almost like a smirk. Fine, she whispered. I raised a brow. Fine? Her eyes gleamed with something dark. You think you've won, Jake. You think this is over. But you have no idea what's coming next. I let out a dry chuckle. Oh, sweetheart. I stepped closer, leaning in slightly. I know exactly what's coming next. She exhaled sharply, her confidence flickering again. I held her gaze for a second longer, then turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her standing there in the wreckage of her own making. Because the best part? She had no idea that I had one more move left to play. Lisa was gone. Or at least physically. I stood in the doorway of what used to be our bedroom, staring at the half-emptied closet, the mess she left behind. A few drawers hung open, her things hastily stuffed into a suitcase in a pathetic attempt at a grand exit. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled, a symbolic representation of the disaster she had turned our marriage into. The house felt different, quieter, colder, not in a painful way, not anymore, in a way that told me something rotting had been removed. She had left in a storm of rage, shoving past me on her way to the door, her suitcase dragging behind her like a corpse she didn't want to carry. She didn't say goodbye, didn't give me the satisfaction of watching her break completely. But it didn't matter, because I had already won, or so I thought. I walked into the kitchen, grabbing a beer from the fridge, my muscles finally unclenching. It was over. Finally, after months of suspicion, after weeks of unraveling her web of lies, after days of preparing for this final confrontation, it was over. Until my phone buzzed. I glanced down. One new email. From an address I didn't recognize. I frowned, opening it. And the second I saw the contents, everything stopped. From redacted subject. Thought you should know Jake. You don't know me, but I know her. I'm sure by now you know about her affair. But what you don't know is that you weren't the only one she was lying to. I was her lover. At least that's what she told me. That she was trapped in a miserable marriage with a man who didn't care about her, who barely noticed she existed. She said she was saving up to leave you, that she wanted to be with me, but she needed time. I believed her, until I got your email. Until I saw the proof you sent me, the recordings, the money transfers, the way she talked about me like I was just a backup plan. She played me just like she played you. But here's the part you really need to hear, Jake. She's not done. She called me after she left. She was furious, ranting about how you ruined everything. But in between the rage, she slipped up. She said she still had one more card to play. I don't know what she meant. But if I were you, I'd watch my back. I thought you should know. See, I read the email 3 times, my grip on the phone tightening. My chest felt like it had a vice around it, squeezing slow, deliberate, unrelenting. One more card to play. I had destroyed her plans. Exposed her lies. Sent her running with nothing but the clothes on her back. But Lisa wasn't the type to go down quietly. And now? Now I had no idea what kind of damage she was about to try and inflict. My pulse pounded in my ears. I exhaled slowly, forcing my body to stay still, to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help me. Anger wouldn't help me. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what her next move was before she had the chance to make it. Because if Lisa wanted to play another game, she was about to learn. I never lose. I sat there, gripping my phone, rereading the email until the words blurred together. Lisa still had one more card to play. I should have seen this coming. She was too arrogant, too vindictive to just accept defeat and disappear. She had spent months crafting her betrayal, molding her escape plan like a sculptor perfecting a masterpiece. She wasn't just going to let it all burn without trying to set me on fire on her way out. But what was her move? She had no money, no support. Her so-called lover was out of the picture now that he knew the truth. She had nothing. So what the hell was she planning? I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to think logically. Lisa didn't just want to leave, she wanted to leave with the upper hand. She wanted to be the victim, the one who walked away with people feeling sorry for her. If she couldn't take my money, if she couldn't manipulate her lover into keeping her, if she had no cards left to play financially, then that meant only one thing. Lisa was about to go after my reputation. A sinking feeling crawled up my spine as I scrolled through my contacts and hit dial. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Jake. It was Matt, my closest friend, hell, my only real friend. We had been through everything together, from college dorm room disasters to standing beside each other at our weddings. If there was anyone who needed to hear this before it spiraled, it was him. Matt, I said, my voice tight, I need you to listen to me carefully. Immediately, his tone shifted. What's wrong? It's Lisa. A sharp breath on the other end. What did she do now? I wasted no time laying everything out. The affair, the stolen money, the recordings, the way I had flipped the entire situation on her and sent her running. And finally, the email, the warning. Lisa's last move. When I finished, Matt didn't speak right away. I could hear him shifting, exhaling heavily through his nose. She's gonna lie about you, he said flatly. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. That's what I'm thinking too. She can't hit you financially, so she's gonna hit you socially. Exactly. She's gonna make you the bad guy. Yeah. Silence stretched between us. Then Matt cursed under his breath. That bitch? I let out a dry chuckle. That's an understatement. What do you want to do? He asked. I exhaled. Get ahead of it. Lisa had spent months weaving a narrative that painted her as the poor, neglected wife. If she was about to go public with her sob story, I needed to control the story before she had the chance. I wasn't about to let her win round two. Matt cleared his throat. Jake, you know I got your back, man. Whatever you need. I appreciate it, I said. But for now, just be ready. If she tries anything, if she reaches out to people, if she starts spreading lies, I need to know. Got it. A pause. Then, more hesitantly, you okay? I hesitated. Was I okay? I wasn't sure. I had spent so much time uncovering Lisa's betrayal, so much time fighting her, that I hadn't had a second to process what it all actually meant. She had been my wife, the person I had trusted, the person I had loved, and none of it had been real. But I couldn't think about that now. Not yet. Not until I was sure she was gone for good. I will be, I finally said. Matt sighed. All right, keep me updated. I will. We hung up. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. Lisa was out there right now, planning something. I could feel it. And whatever it was, I needed to be ready. I barely slept that night. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just ready. Lisa had one more move left, and I wasn't about to sit back and let her play it uncontested. She was out there right now, seething, desperate, her mind racing to figure out how to rewrite the story in her favor. But she had underestimated me once. She wouldn't get the chance to do it again. By morning, I had already formulated my plan. Step 1. Control the narrative. Before Lisa could spread whatever twisted version of reality she was cooking up, I needed to make sure the people who mattered knew the truth. That meant talking to the right people, our mutual friends, my colleagues, anyone who might be a target for her manipulation. I wasn't going to start a war. I wasn't going to stoop to her level. I was just going to make sure her lies had no legs to stand on. By noon, I had already spoken to 3 of our closest mutual acquaintances, keeping my story clean, concise, and undeniable. Lisa cheated. Lisa stole. Lisa left. And Lisa was not to be trusted. No dramatics. No bitterness. Just facts. By the time I got to the 4th person, I already knew she had started. Yeah, man, I don't know. Mark, one of our mutual friends, sounded hesitant over the phone. Lisa called me this morning. She was a wreck. Said you went crazy. That you threw her out. Made up some story about her cheating to justify it. I let out a slow breath, gripping my phone tighter. And you believe that? No, he said quickly. No, of course not. It caught me off guard. She sounded... He trailed off, like he was trying to find the right words. Convincing, I offered dryly. He sighed. Yeah, and I guess I just wanted to hear your side before I, made up my mind. I almost laughed. Lisa was good, I'd give her that. She wasn't outright calling people and saying I was some monster. No, she was crying, sounding lost, confused, like a victim. She wasn't telling them I hit her. She wasn't telling them I abused her. She was just letting them assume. It was brilliant and infuriating. I took a deep breath. Mark, listen to me. Lisa's a manipulator. She's a liar. She cheated, she stole from me, and when she realized I wasn't as dumb as she thought, she ran. That's the truth. You don't have to believe me, but I trailed off, then pulled my phone away for a second to open my files. I can send you proof. Mark hesitated. Proof? Yep. Bank statements. Recordings. The whole package. Silence. Then finally send it. I did. A few minutes later, Mark let out a low whistle through the phone. Jesus. She really thought she could get away with this. She did, I said simply. Damn, he muttered. All right, man. I appreciate you being straight with me. And for what it's worth, I got your back. I exhaled slowly, tension easing just slightly from my shoulders. Thanks, Mark. One more person down. I wasn't going to chase after everyone. I wasn't going to spend my energy trying to defend myself to people who had already made up their minds. But for the people who mattered, I would make damn sure they saw Lisa for exactly what she was. Step 2. Figure out her next move before she made it. And that meant finding her. Because Lisa was still out there. And if I knew her at all, she wasn't just sitting in some hotel room crying over her loss. She was planning. And I needed to know exactly what the hell she was planning before it was too late that I wasn't a fool. I knew Lisa wouldn't just disappear into the night, licking her wounds in silence. She wasn't built that way. She needed to win, needed to feel like she had control. And if she couldn't manipulate me anymore, she would turn her attention elsewhere. I needed to know where. Step 1 had been about controlling the narrative, and I had done that. Every person she might have gone to with her sob story had already heard my version, backed by undeniable proof. Her usual tactics, vague cries for sympathy, painting herself as the misunderstood victim, wouldn't work on the people who mattered. But Step 2 was about anticipation. Because Lisa was still dangerous. Not physically, no, Lisa wasn't the kind of person to slash tires or show up at my door with a weapon. But she was calculating, manipulative, vindictive in a way that made her even more unpredictable now that she had lost everything. So I did something I knew she never expected. I found her first. It wasn't hard. Lisa wasn't as discreet as she thought. A quick transaction history check on our still-linked accounts showed an Uber charge, a hotel stay, a food delivery, a location. Lisa hadn't left town. She was still here, and that meant she was still playing. I drove to the hotel, not entirely sure what I was planning to do when I got there. Confront her? Call her bluff? Rip apart whatever last-ditch scheme she was trying to put together? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that I needed to be the one making the next move. When I arrived, the place was exactly what I expected. A mid-range, nothing special hotel, one of those places designed for business travelers or people passing through town. The kind of place Lisa would hate, which meant she had no choice but to be here. I walked inside, my heartbeat steady, my expression unreadable. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anxious. I was ready. The receptionist barely glanced at me when I approached the desk. Checking in. No, I said smoothly, flashing my most neutral, harmless smile. Actually, I'm here to visit someone. Lisa Carter. Room number. The receptionist hesitated, eyeing me carefully. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. She left something important at home. I just need to drop it off. It was just enough truth to sell the lie. A short pause. Then finally, room 214. I smiled. Thanks. I took the elevator up, feeling the tension coil tighter with every floor. My hands were steady, my mind sharp. There was no turning back now. Room 214 was at the end of the hallway. I stopped in front of it, exhaling slowly. Then, without hesitation, I knocked. Silence. Then, footsteps. Then the door cracked open. Lisa stood there, wearing one of those oversized sweaters she always wore when she wanted to look small, vulnerable. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Jake. I smiled. Miss me. She didn't answer. Her grip tightened on the door handle. What are you doing here? I was about to ask you the same thing. I tilted my head. You're still in town. Why? Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Then her mask slid back into place. Not that it's any of your business, but I needed time to figure things out. I chuckled. Right? Sure. She narrowed her eyes. You're spying on me? I raised a brow. Oh, please. If I wanted to keep tabs on you, you wouldn't even know. She exhaled sharply, her nostrils flaring. What do you want, Jake? I took a step closer, watching her carefully. I got an interesting email last night. From a certain someone you used to call your lover. Her expression flickered. I smiled. Yeah. Turns out he didn't take the news too well. And you know what else? He warned me that you weren't done yet. Lisa went still. Tell me, I murmured, tilting my head. What exactly was your one last move, Lisa? She clenched her jaw. I don't know what you're talking about. I laughed softly. Come on. We both know you're a better liar than that. She inhaled sharply, her fingers tightening on the edge of the door. Let me guess, I continued smoothly. You were gonna paint me as the monster. Maybe a little abuse story? A few vague accusations? Just enough to make people wonder, to make me look like the bad guy while you walked away with sympathy. Lisa stayed silent, but she didn't deny it. I smiled. Pathetic. Her jaw tightened. You deserve this, Jake. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. You really believe that? She swallowed, her throat bobbing. But I could see it, the hesitation, the flicker of doubt. Because deep down, Lisa knew the truth. She had lost. Completely. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of reality crush her. Then, finally, I exhaled. Here's what's gonna happen, I said, voice calm, steady. You're going to leave. Today. You're gonna pack up whatever little dignity you have left and get out of town. No lies. No revenge plots. No last-minute sob stories. Because if you do, if I hear even one whisper of a rumor, if you so much as breathe my name in a way that paints me as the villain, I smiled coldly. I will bury you. Lisa inhaled sharply. You? I have everything, Lisa. The texts, the recordings, the proof. And if you try to turn this into a game, I took another step forward, dropping my voice to a whisper. I will make sure you never play again. She trembled. For the first time since this all started, she looked afraid. Not angry, not defensive, afraid. I held her gaze for a second longer, then exhaled, stepping back. Pack your bags, Lisa. Then I turned and walked away. Because this time, I was the one leaving her behind.